Video 05. The Ponzi scheme that lasted 17 years. Madoff. The Ponzi scheme that lasted 17 years. Madoff, $65 billion. That is the number that made Bernie Madoff the most notorious fraudster in human history. For 17 years, he ran the largest Ponzi scheme the world has ever seen. He stole from billionaires, charities, Holocaust survivors, and his closest friends. And nobody caught him. Not the SEC, not Wall Street, not even the people who tried to warn them. This is the story of the man who fooled the entire financial world and the devastating trail of destruction he left behind. Bernard Lawrence Madoff grew up in Queens, New York. In 1960, at the age of 22, he started his own investment firm, Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, with $5,000 he had saved from working as a lifeguard and installing sprinkler systems. In the early years, the firm was a legitimate market-making business. Madoff was a pioneer in electronic trading, and his firm became one of the first to use computers to execute trades. By the 1990s, Madoff's firm was one of the largest market makers on Wall Street, handling billions of dollars in transactions every day. Madoff became a respected figure in the financial world. He served as chairman of the NASDAQ stock exchange. He sat on advisory boards. He donated to charities. He was the kind of person you trusted with your money because everyone else already did. But alongside his legitimate trading operation, Madoff was running a separate business on a different floor of his office building. This was his investment advisory arm, where wealthy individuals and institutions gave him money to invest. And this is where the fraud lived. The investment advisory business was shrouded in secrecy. It operated on a separate floor. Employees from the trading side were not allowed to visit. The books were kept by a tiny accounting firm run by one man in a strip mall in suburban New York. Nothing about it made sense, unless you understood what Madoff was actually doing. A Ponzi scheme is the simplest fraud in the world. You take money from new investors and use it to pay returns to existing investors. As long as new money keeps coming in, everyone thinks they are making a profit. There is no actual investing happening. No trades, no strategy. Just a constant flow of money from new victims to old ones. Madoff's version was the most sophisticated Ponzi scheme ever constructed. Instead of promising outrageous returns that would raise red flags, Madoff offered modest but incredibly consistent returns, typically 10 to 12% per year. Not enough to seem impossible, just enough to seem too good to pass up. His supposed strategy was called split strike conversion. He told investors he was buying a basket of stocks in the S&P 100 while using options to hedge the risk. It sounded sophisticated. It sounded safe. And the returns were remarkably steady. In years when the market crashed, Madoff still showed profits. That alone should have been a warning sign. Nobody beats the market every single year. But people did not question it because Madoff had something more valuable than a good strategy. He had exclusivity. Getting into Madoff's fund was like getting into an exclusive club. He turned people away. He made investors feel privileged to give him their money. And that psychology of exclusivity made people less likely to ask questions. The money flowed in from everywhere. Wealthy families in Palm Beach and New York, European hedge funds, Jewish charities and community organizations, universities and pension funds. Madoff's client list read like a who's who of the global elite. Here is what makes the Madoff story truly infuriating. People tried to warn the authorities, and nobody listened. In 1999, a financial analyst named Harry Markopolos was asked by his boss to reverse engineer Madoff's strategy. Markopolos spent 4 hours looking at the numbers and concluded that the returns were mathematically impossible. They could not be achieved through the strategy Madoff described. The only explanation was fraud. Markopoulos did not keep this to himself. Over the next 9 years, he submitted detailed reports to the SEC at least 5 separate times. He titled one of his submissions, "The World's Largest Hedge Fund is a Fraud." He laid out the evidence clearly. He showed that the returns defied mathematical probability. He identified the lack of independent auditing. He pointed out that the trading volumes Madoff claimed did not match actual market activity. The SEC investigated Madoff multiple times, and every time they found nothing. Why? Because they were outmatched. Madoff was a former NASDAQ chairman. He was charming, confident, and deeply connected. When SEC investigators visited, he gave them the runaround, produced fabricated documents, and used his reputation to deflect scrutiny. Markopoulos later described the SEC as incompetent, saying that its investigators did not understand the financial products they were supposed to be regulating. He said he feared for his life during the years he spent trying to expose Madoff, believing that anyone managing that much illicit money might resort to violence to protect the secret. Financial journalist Erin Arvidlund also raised the alarm. In 2001, she published an article in Barron's questioning how Madoff could produce such consistent returns. The article received attention, but led nowhere. The financial establishment simply did not want to believe that one of their own was a criminal. What finally brought Madoff down was not the SEC, not journalists, and not whistleblowers. It was the 2008 financial crisis. When the global markets collapsed, Madoff's investors panicked. They started requesting withdrawals. At first, the requests were manageable. But as the crisis deepened, the withdrawal requests grew to $7 billion. And Madoff simply did not have the money. A Ponzi scheme can survive as long as new money comes in faster than old money goes out. But in a financial crisis, everyone wants their money back at the same time. And there is no actual money to return because it was never invested. On December 10, 2008, Madoff told his 2 sons, Mark and Andrew, who worked in the legitimate trading arm of the firm, that the investment advisory business was a fraud. He called it one big lie. His sons immediately contacted the authorities. The next day, December 11, 2008, FBI agents arrived at Madoff's penthouse APA.